Hey, well, hello there, folks. Back for more, back for more. So we are getting into final paint on some of the last images in our scene here. And let's see, let me take this down where you can see it here. So I'm going to bring it down to 100%. Move it up here so that you can see it up over my image. So as you can see, we're still painting. This scene is being done in a straight along fashion. Each scene is being added. Um, each scene is just being added to the last, so that whenever we stop this, we will have a film that is a continuous run film that's not actually being edited together, but it's actually being animated in a straight ahead fashion as we're just sort of inventing it as we go, which is something that is kind of fun to do. And there are times when I think as an artist, you can do this kind of stuff. You do the things that make sense to you as an artist. You don't have to work in a calculated fashion. You can do things in a much more spontaneous way. Um, I've always tried things for fun, and I found that it works. It works fine. You know, a lot of it just comes down to what it is you're trying to accomplish. What do you want to do? Well, how do you want it to look? That's really what it comes down to. So there's no need to feel like you have to follow a specific rule of thumb about how you do something. You have to decide what what effect would you like to have, and leave it at that. Okay. And as you move through your your scenes and each particular action, you're going to discover things as you go, and you'll make mistakes and all of that. And you just decide how you want to deal with it. All right, so this is where we are on our paint. I've finished painting the whale in the distance, which passes by her, and so now I'm at the one that's in the foreground here. And this one, of course, is obscuring the other two. The paint is on the underneath, so you want to have it set underneath. And I'm using an airbrush on the color, just so you know. So I'm not filling the color in, though I could. Like if I were to do a fill here, that's what that would look like. But I'm actually doing strokes here because I sort of want to keep it more, I don't know the words, I'm going to say organic, but um, I like the quality of the soft edge. So the only drawback, of course, to that is keeping everything consistent. That can be sometimes a little problematic. But you take some chances with what you're doing. Everything isn't going to be um, perfectly, working. You have to kind of try things, and I think you make some decisions, about what do you want to do. Let's see. So, but you find the right blend. Now I make a pretty big brush since this fish is so big. It just naturally makes sense to go with a fairly sizable brush since you're doing a sizable area. as I get close to any details, I'll make the size of the brush a lot smaller. Like when I get around his eye, I make that brush smaller. And then when I'm doing the eye, then that's when I make the brush the smallest. I'm working around the highlight that's already drawn in the eye here. And then the color around the eye, like so. I have to kind of look to see what was the colors that I had, where those colors are going to go. And, you can see that I have to be careful to see what color I'm using, where the color is going to go, what it's overlapping. If you're using an airbrush like I'm doing here, you're going to have probably a lot of blending, where you're going to have things that, you're going to have one set of colors that's going to work right into another set of colors. So, as I put, say, the belly colors in, they're going to kind of mesh with the some of the colors on the top. So I can afford to go with a much bigger brush, you see there. But I'm always going to kind of have to end up flipping back, you see, to previous drawings to see, well, what color is that I'm actually putting down now? Because I'm not dropping the color in, I'm actually swathing the color on. So I got to be careful that I'm using the right color. I tend to, if I see a color, if I'm working with a color like, that little brown, darker brown stripe area, that's important. I got to make sure I've got that in the right place. See? So I'm doing that first, you see, because I can see where it is. And the other colors work around it, or the other color, rather, works around it. But I do have to kind of be careful, like, okay, what is that color? Am I putting it in the right place? And as I move backwards with this color on the character, where is it going? Like here, it's going to kind of taper back into there. Then I got to grab the other color. And that's going to be all this. And then I can make this a much bigger area here. So all of this is going to be the other color. So at this point, I've only got two colors to work with here, which is a little helpful. And then, so I make that brush bigger. It makes it easier to fill in the space. There we go. I guess really, you're always making these kinds of choices, saying, what's the color going to be? Oh, it's going to be this color. It's going to be that color. But, when you're working this way, you do have to kind of flip back. It's like, what color? Where's that color go? So it becomes an issue to pay attention as to see where it is. When you're doing the airbrushing colors, you can kind of get away with a little bit of not worrying about the edges of color kind of blending together. You you're not going to notice it quite so much as it's moving. So even though the edges might be blending, one color getting close to blending with another, the soft edges in the airbrush color, it kind of takes the curse off of it being accurate, so you can just kind of swath these colors in. You're not going to really, it's not going to be an issue. You can go ahead and swath the color in, and it's probably going to be fine. It doesn't mean it's going to look perfect for every single frame, because it's probably not. But, this thing is moving, see, so, you don't notice it. You don't notice errors so much. They're there, but, yeah, see, flip back. Yeah, that's the right area for the darker brown to go. In the old days, when we did cell paint, sometimes the drawing had an indication on it as to what the color should be. I remember that the ink and paint ladies used to mark the drawing, and they'd mark what color. Sometimes they would have numbers on the drawing to indicate what color was going to go in the area, so that the ink and paint girls could just do it. And I say ink and paint girls. Back in the day, women were the ones that did all of the ink and paint. And whether or not this is true, I don't know, but it was said that part of the reason why women were given the job of ink and paint was because they were more meticulous with it. They did a better job. It didn't mean that men wouldn't do the job. It meant that generally men did the animation, and that was, of course, a bone of contention, I'm sure, for some women, but because you have some very talented women, female animators and designers. So, but this was a job that was wholesalely done by women. And I will have to say that, being in the business as long as I have, which has been well over 40 years, I did meet and work with a great many very talented ladies who were ink and paint, were considered the ink and paint people. And they certainly had some great insights as to how to make the finished artwork look. Some of the great scenes that you've seen in Disney cartoons, I don't think would be as good as they turned out had these ladies not done their job so well. It is a meticulous job, it is a very meticulous job. And so, there you go. But yeah, evidently they did use identifiers for color. So, like, I think that was probably because there were so many people working, and one person might not necessarily be the only person painting the scene. And like I'm sitting here now, I'm painting this frame at a time. But of course, I've animated the scene, so I know what's what. I know what part I'm looking at, and all. But imagine an environment where you've got literally multitudes of people working on the exact same sequence, maybe the exact same scene. Well, the person down the hall might have the front part of the scene. The person next to you might have the middle part of the scene, and somebody might be in a completely different room with the last part of the scene. So how would anybody know what color was? You wouldn't want to be in a scenario where you got like, oh, I got to run in there and ask so and so, like, what color is this part? That would just be crazy, and it would also be disruptive, because in order to get something done, you wouldn't want to be in a situation where you've got people running around trying to find out what color things are. So somebody would go through, and they would identify the colors and where they were supposed to go. And so that's how they would do that. Today, thankfully, because you've got all this digital help and ways of working, in a sense, really, it's just a very different world. So, you can do a lot of stuff yourself way faster than they could years ago. Also, you don't have to wait for paint to dry. That's another thing. Everything I'm doing now, because it's all digital, there's no having to wait for it to dry. I mean, imagine that. That's what they had to do. They couldn't. They'd had to paint something, then they have to wait for it to dry. So it's a lot of work. So that's a factor that we don't think about. But when you're doing this yourself, you just have to kind of keep track of like where's the color going to go, and you know what part of the character is this, what part of the character, how's that, um, you know, interact with this part, that part. It's a little easier for you to keep track of things because maybe you're the only person working on it. Well, you are the only person working on it. This type of work, um, you know, you do yourself. I think there's probably the possibility. I don't know why there wouldn't be the possibility that you could actually have AI do something like this. Why not? Why would not AI be able to paint drawings? I see AI as a tool that could help the individual artist to do a job. And, just like anything else, there's a learning curve for the AI, I guess. I guess you could say it would be a learning curve. And that's normal. That's fine. Let's see now. No, I want to paint this fin on his back. I think I'm going to paint the fin on the back a different color. I'm going to make it gray. But I'm going to use the airbrush anyway. So, yeah. See, did it start to come in? No, that's just now coming in. Okay. So we'll use the gray there. Yeah. And then make a bigger brush for the rest of it. Yeah. Yeah. There we go. Yeah. Let's see. I'll play that. As I'm thinking about it, soft edges on color, you could do a lot of that. That could be really kind of neat. Let's see. So he just got that consistent color all the way going around. I wonder if I should break it up at all as he goes through, or should keep it. This is gonna get as he goes. I wonder if I should find a place to. Well, no, I think I should keep it where I got it. So we get to here. We've only got really a few more frames here. So what is that? Oh yeah, okay. So where we go? Let's see. Bring it down. There we go. Awesome. There we go. Right. And let's see. All right. Okay. So it looks like, oh yeah, I see where it is. Okay, so it's this color line up in here. Yeah. Yeah. And then that's the right color? Is that right? I don't think that's right. Right? Hmm. Yeah, that's the right color. Hmm. I almost wasn't sure there if that was the right gray or not. There we go. I don't know why we couldn't. You know, it seems like to me AI would be a great assistant to paint. Yeah, you know what AI would be great doing? Whoops, hold up. I don't see that. Yeah, it's gonna stop there. The edge of the edge of the fish is there. Uh, AI would be great doing in betweens. Man, if we can get AI to do in betweens, ho ho, boy, that would be. That was the thing that was really cool about Flash was that Flash kind of did in betweens, but it really kind of depended on the kind of action that you were doing. Because I always thought that it's like if you could somehow mechanize that part of the job, you'd be in great shape. I mean, that's kind of really what you're getting when you're looking at rigged animation. That's really rigged animation is great. Like what Toon Boom came up with is a brilliant thing because what they're doing, you see, is uh, they're eliminating the in between issue. You know, if you've got drawings where you can rig the character and then you can move it like a puppet, then you don't have to deal with in betweens. You can tell the computer, okay, I'm going to have this many drawings between these two positions, and then it does it, and yeah, you're good, right? Well, that's great because then that saves you a whole bunch of work. But I think with drawn animation, that would be even better if you could do it with drawn animation. And it seems like to me, I would think, I mean, I don't know, but it seems like that there should be a way to make that work. And it seems like to me that AI should be able to do that. I don't know if I'm right about that. Some brilliant person out there, maybe write some code. You know, if nobody's thought of this yet, there's the idea. Because it seems like to me that that would work. I don't know why it wouldn't work, but it certainly would be a way. It would be a great way to make animation easier for individuals because if you could map out your key positions, which would be easy to do, then you could let the AI do the rest. And that, like I said, that seems like that would be possible. I would think. I don't know why it wouldn't be. I mean, but obviously there's going to be issues about it, but I don't know. I mean, we're getting better and better and better at our technology. I don't know why that wouldn't be a part of it, a part of what we could do, a part of what technology could give us, something that would, um, you know, make that a possibility. And then you see, because it seems to me that the less the individual artist has to do, the quicker you can get to telling a story, then the quicker you can get a film made. Because up to now, I mean, the issue has always been time, how much time it takes you to make something. So, and that's where computer animation has kind of excelled. But the same old problems exist with animation continuously because it's so labor intensive. There's no way around the labor intensive quality of animation. It's just the way it goes. You can't get around that. Oddly enough, the beauty of what it is you're making depends specifically on the fact that you put the work in. So, and that's a good thing. That's not a bad thing, but it's a time consuming thing. So, there you go. All right, good people. Well, we're at 25 minutes, so I'm going to stop. All right, folks, carry on. Have a great evening. Once again, don't forget to thank God for the talents and gifts that you have. I'll see you guys tomorrow, and don't forget, Jesus is Lord.